Okay, Elliot, you're up.
I'm up. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Greenwich Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency meeting of June 22nd via Zoom. Let's see, we have Jay, Stefan, Klaus, and Bill. Klaus, you're seated. That gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good.
So I'm just going to do based on what I sewed for the transcript. So as a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. We encourage people who are not speaking to have their microphone on mute. And when you speak, if you could please raise your hand, the virtual blue hand, and Elliot or I will call on you. And if you could state your name so the transcripts pick it up. So as far as members, I see that we have got Jay Shondorf, Bill Galvin, Joe Rogers, Norma Curlin, Stefan Skopoulos, Elliot Benton, Klaus Yonder, who, Elliot, you seated, correct?
Right, I do not see Norma.
Norma's there.
There she is. Okay, I was looking the wrong way. Very good. Bill, you enjoy it in the mountains there? Anyway, okay. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the draft minutes for the April 27th and the May 18th meetings? Do I have any modifications?
I'd make a motion, this is Joe Rogers, I'd make a motion to approve both.
Second.
It's Norma.
Norma Curlin, second.
No, it was me, Klaus Yonder.
Okay, I'll roll call
Please.
for approval of the minutes for both April 27th and 2020. Jay Shondorf,
Approve.
Bill Galvin,
Approve.
Joe Rogers,
Approve.
Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Stefan Skopoulos,
Yes.
Elliot Benton,
Yes.
Klaus Yonder.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Director's report.
Nothing of substance to report this month.
Okay, that makes it quick.
Yep.
Uh,
The quarterly compliance, we're going to have to wait on. Doreen's internet went down, so we have lost her for the time being. And with her, our maps.
Okay. With her maps. Oh dear. Okay, that's going to make things a little bit difficult. Any idea of when she will be able to come back?
Nope. The internet is a fickle thing.
Yeah. I would guess then for future meetings, we should have the maps backed up on a second computer.
Lesson learned, yes.
I suggest we jump to consent approvals and other items that don't really need much in the way of maps.
Very good. I think it's a wonderful idea. Has everybody had a chance to look at the consent approvals, and do we have any questions, comments, or discussion?
Nope.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the consent approvals?
Joe Rogers. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve Joe Rogers.
Bill Galvin, second.
Thank you. Roll call. This is to approve 2024, 2020-53, 2020-56 as shown on the consent approval. Klaus Yonder,
Okay.
Jay Shondorf,
Approve.
Bill Galvin,
Approve.
Joe Rogers,
Approved.
Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Stefan Skopoulos,
Yes.
Elliot Benton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's receive applications next. I move that we receive applications 1 through 7, I guess it is, unless that's.
Actually, the revised agenda is 1 through 14.
14, that's what I've got.
Okay, I must be looking at the wrong agenda then. Okay. Motion to receive applications 1 through 14 is listed on the revised agenda.
Jay Shondorf, so approved.
Jay
Sorry?
Shondorf makes the motion, second.
Bill Galvin.
Thank you. Okay, running through. Klaus Yonder,
Yes.
Jay
Approved.
Shondorf,
Yes.
Bill Galvin,
Yes.
Joe Rogers,
Yes.
Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Stefan Scopolis,
Yes, approved.
Elliot Benton.
Yes.
Thank you. And Doreen's back.
All right.
Okay. Closed.
Okay. Hello, Doreen.
You're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
Hi. That was a little stressful. That's what I need. Okay, so you're ready for the quarterly compliance summary?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so this quarter is pretty telling in determining how the quarantine has been impacting projects and applications around town, and how staff has been keeping up maintaining inspections and compliance while working from home. The green sheet questionnaires dipped a little bit in numbers. We had 158 over April, May, and June. Last year for the same time period, we had 192 green sheet reviews. We've definitely seen a drop in new application submissions over the 3 months. Although we've had a surge in applications in June with 14 to be received, there's only been a total of 24 applications total, while last year at the same time we had 44 new applications. We've had a significant increase in agent approvals as compared with last year, 25 versus 11, in an effort to continue issuing permits for projects with activities that are either well removed from wetland and watercourse areas or that have minimal disturbance. We've stayed pretty steady with the bond releases. We've reviewed 39 permit files and released 24 bonds. Last year's total were 38 files reviewed and 20 bonds released. Staff's completed 256 site inspections over April, May, and June, which is up from last year's inspections when we did 221. We have several unmet deadlines. Compliance staff has been working with property owners to complete any requirements that are outstanding. For the most part, property owners have been responsive and are working toward coming into compliance. Most of the delays have been reported to be due to the inability to secure contractors during the COVID outbreak. For those who are not responsive, the next step in compliance enforcement will be to place a certificate of violation on the land records that will be maintained until the site comes into full compliance. This step is only done if it has already been approved by the agency as an additional enforcement tool in the original approval. Otherwise, outstanding issues will be placed on the agenda for additional enforcement. There have been 3 violations over the past 3 months. That's the same number we had this time last year. 301 Round Hill Road was submitted, has already submitted a corrective application. 225 Stanwich Road and 24 Stillman Lane will be discussed under violations on the agenda. We've had no public counter hours, so there's no numbers there to report, and that completes the compliance summary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doreen. I have a question. You said that we're now doing more agent approvals than we had in the past. Have we loosened the rules, or are we applying them differently? Why do we have more?
All right. So a couple months ago, we discussed with the agency that where things are in the past, we might have taken to the agency, if they're borderline, we would track more towards an agent approval in order to keep things moving during this time. Truthfully, the applications that have been coming in have not been as complicated either. And each month when we reviewed them, we haven't seen we haven't seen any questions. So I don't believe that we are bending the rules all that much.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on Doreen's report? No. Okay. Let's go on to public hearings. We'll start with 2019-153, 42 Dublin Hill Drive, please.
The applicant will be preparing, this is Bob Kloss, the applicant will be preparing revised plans for submission before the July meeting. And they request a continuance of the public hearing.
We still
Okay.
need to offer public comment, Elliot?
Are there any public comments on 42 Dublin Hill Drive?
If attendees have a question, if they can raise their blue hand, and that way we will be able to unmute you and invite you to speak. I'm not seeing any hands raised in the attendees for this evening.
Very good. Do we need a motion to extend, or we just let it ride?
I think we can just
Keep
push
it
it,
open.
continue it to the July meeting.
Very good. Okay, then let's move on. 2020-010, 306 Round Hill Road. S.E. Minor and Eric Brower for Christopher Pollock for maintenance of a dam, dry hydrant, and installation of restoration plantings within the wetland.
All right, I'll just run through what we've received since May 18th. There was the staff report I prepared dated May 18th. We received revised plans from S.E. Minor. These are dated June 3rd. And we received a revised wetland and buffer habitat enhancement plan prepared by William Kenny Associates dated June 10th. In addition to those items listed in the staff report, we received comments from DPW Engineering Division. This was dated yesterday and sent out to you, the agency members, today. We also, late this afternoon, received sort of a revised drainage summary and explanatory cover letter from S.E. Minor about the drainage, which sort of is in response to this DPW comment. Those items were also forwarded to the members again late this afternoon when I found them. So having done that, the applicant has sort of scaled back what they propose to do. They've taken the dry hydrant off the plan. They've also listened to comments of the agency and staff on their original proposal to maintain the rebuilt spillway and add a gate valve to the low flow pipe. Now the plan, which is on Doreen is sharing, shows they're going to take about a foot off the top of the spillway and cut a slot through the middle of the spillway to the and chop the top off of that pipe, which in essence will eliminate the spillway as an obstruction or a little dam in this watercourse. As noted in the supplemental staff report, we have sent this plan and to Stephen Gephardt, who's the supervising fisheries biologist at Connecticut Deep, seeing if he has any comments about how this revision would be accepted by fish that move up and down the river. The supplemental staff report also summarizes the methodology that the applicant proposes to use in basically scooping out about a 4-foot deep ponded area behind the modified spillway. It would involve diversion of the river through the existing bypass channel using water-filled bladders, which is a very good method to use rather than trying to drive sheet piles or some other more disruptive idea. So it would be diverted, dredged. The diversion would be switched over to block the bypass, and the dredge materials would be used to fill the bypass. The lead opening of the bypass would be reinforced with a bentonite clay mat, which when it gets wet, it swells and forms a seal. This would be covered by soil, covered by core logs, and plantings that are not deeply rooted, so as to not threaten the integrity of the bentonite mat. The applicant estimates it would take 1 to 2 weeks to accomplish this operation. As noted in the report, the stability of the dredge materials in the bypass channel, if they were to be subjected to flooding events, particularly before the enhancement plan is implemented and the area is stabilized by rooted plants, the stability has not been well documented by the applicant. The planting plan itself is pretty good. 35 trees, a mix of native deciduous species, those are canopy trees, a dozen understory trees, wetland and upland meadow underneath the trees, and some screening plantings up along the Round Hill Road. This will pretty much restore that eastern bank of the brook to what it had been before it was cleared and grubbed in November. We're coming up on the best time of year to do this project, and I did provide conditions of approval if the agency wants to proceed with this with a deadline of October 31st to complete all of this work. But as I said, we still have, we just got this drainage information, supplemental information today. We have not heard back from Mr. Gephardt. The 90-day extension goes through September 1st, so we have another meeting or two to review this, although I would hope by the July meeting we get everything answered so that we can get this tied up this fall. That's all I have for you tonight.
Okay. Do we have comments from the applicant?
Yes, Larry, I'm going to elevate you to the panel. You can unmute yourself and state your name, and let's see, Eric Brower. Likewise, I will elevate you to the panel. Is there anybody else on your team that needs to be elevated? Oh, I see Bill Kenny. I'm thinking he wants in. Where'd you go, Bill? Bill, you have also been promoted to panelist. Okay.
Hey, can you please also unmute Eric?
I'm here now.
Yep, he's able to unmute himself, as is Bill Kenny. And if I can remind you, gentlemen, to please state your name when you speak for the transcript.
Yeah, this is Eric Brower. I just want to confirm you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have tonight, obviously, Larry Liebman is here, Bill Kenny, and we have Peter Finkbeiner, who's the PE on the project. And as Bob Clausey indicated in his remarks, obviously this project has been significantly changed, and we no longer, by way of lowering the spillway to its pre-failure condition, we don't need a fish ladder at this point, as we're now going to have equal elevations on either side of that pipe. So it's essentially continuous low flow condition for the stream system. So we believe the fish are going to be able to migrate. Be glad to hear what Mr. Gephardt has to say. The planting plan, I think, has been discussed sufficiently with Bob's summary. And then as to the engineering details that we have, Peter Finkbeiner has made a correction on the analysis or the numbers that he utilized. And I think what his conclusion was originally and what it is now is that, and Peter can speak in greater detail, but the dam itself is really inconsequential in terms of the flows, since it's the Round Hill Road culvert that really restricts and determines what's going on here. So what we're proposing to do is essentially reestablish the pre-failure condition, actually even less of an extent of the dam, because by lowering that spillway, we're essentially opening the whole stream up. So we think that will be borne out by Mr. Marucci's subsequent evaluation, and I'm not sure where we stand with the agency's outside consulting reviewing the materials. Can you update us on that?
Bob Clossie, I was waiting for Scott to chime in, seeing as he's the town's point person on drainage. His comment that we might want to get an outside consultant in to look at this is well taken. However, now that we have the Mr. Finkbeiner's revisions and that are matched very directly to the current plan, I'd like to see if, I mean, I have no problem looking at an outside consultant, but maybe pass this by Mr. Marucci again. And if, as my understanding, the modified spillway will overtop in the 1-year storm. And beyond the 1-year storm, and it'll flow the whole time anyways through that slot, but beyond the 1-year storm, the control is the uphill face of the Round Hill Road bridge, because that fills up and the brook is taking as much water as it will, and the spillway is underwater. So Mr. Marucci at that point may say it's acceptable. He may say he's still uncomfortable with what the impact on downstream properties might be. We have a time to find that out, I think.
I would say I'm in favor of pulling in an outside consultant. Malone McBroom not only brings the engineering perspective that the DPW has utilized in the past, but they also have riverine experts, fluvial morphologists that can speak to some of the issues about rebuilding this watercourse and the fisheries, that I think it would behoove the agency to have that, since it's an area of expertise that none of the staff members bring.
This is Eric Brower again. From a timing point, as Bob pointed out, I think in terms of when we can get this work done, I don't know how long that might take, but if we go past July, I think it's going to be difficult to actually mobilize and get everybody on board with all the plan details reviewed and approved by staff and everyone to get this done this season. So hopefully we can pull this together so that we get a July approval on it, so that we know which direction we're going. We're hoping that tonight it could be approved subject to conditions. I'm seeing a head shaking. No, seeing it. Okay. Well, that's the agency's pleasure. That's okay. I'm just worried about the time, and I think we're confident in what the engineering is going to bear out. So, so I guess that's really the key issue is timing here.
Eric, or someone from your team, this is Pat Sesto, can you please speak to the excavation of the area behind the dam, how 4 feet came to be the desired depth? And there's notations about historical depth, but you know, that depends on the span of history you want to look at.
Yeah, this is Larry Liebman. I mean, what that is an easy area calculation, that would be the material that would be required to fill the breach area. And then I can talk to the stability of that breach area, of that breach material. That material that was excavated originally did block, that's what initiated the violation in the first place. So I'm fairly secure that that material will be sufficient to fill in the breach area once the dredge is taking place and we have the bentonite core and the spillway taken care of. I think 4 feet was a number that we chose to do as an area equation, but we're only going to take out what we need to fill in that area, because that's what, so we would rather not have to import material if not necessary.
I'm not sure how excavating a water course to fill an area that was wrongfully excavated is an appropriate equation.
That's Eric Brower again. The excavation that was inappropriate, you're referring to the breach or to the pond itself?
The side channel
Is that
that's going to be filled.
right?
I'm not seeing the logic of why one would excavate in a water course, a river, in order to gain fill to put someplace else on site. That doesn't seem to me to be an appropriate reason to be excavating in a water course.
It's Eric Brower again. I think the intention there was that the breach was actually caused by a failure of the upper part of the dam, and the idea was that this would be restoring it to a pre-failure condition.
Okay. That's not what I'm hearing from Larry.
That's what I was trying to infer. I am not saying the dredge was always part and parcel of what we were doing to create that ponded area. Once the dam is removed, it becomes a riffle area in the watercourse.
But now it's going to be 4 feet deep.
Bob Clossy, I'd like Mr. Liebman or Mr. Brower to describe the material that they think they're going to be dredging from that area behind the spillway. I mean, is it cobbles? Is it sediment? Is it organic? What is it?
It's primarily organic material and sediments.
This may be a slightly unusual question, but given the age of this waterway, was there ever any sort of commercial activity, manufacturing activity when Greenwich was a manufacturing town further up the stream?
There was, I'm sorry, it's Eric Brower again. If you go further all the way up the stream to Old Mill Road, there was in fact, well, there still is the remnants of the grist mill that was built with a dam, and that was an industrial or a commercial operation at the time back in the 1700s.
Okay, so you can probably assume that whatever sediment you take out of there is going to be clean.
Yes, it was a water wheel mill, and then went to a screw turbine mill for grinding flour. Yes, so it was not industrial in that sense. Commercial, yes, but grain.
Okay. Thank you.
So I would say I'm not, I don't believe that the record reflects accurately the amount of sediment that is proposed to come out of here versus old stream bed. It sounds like there's some assumptions that are being made without any data to back it up.
Oh, do we have any idea where the stream bed sat before the dam was put in? Larry?
Repeat that, please.
Well, what I'm trying to ascertain is where was the bottom of the stream before the dam was put in? And then the follow-up question is, why would you go below that?
So this is Eric Brower. So when the dam was built, that pipe that's in there, that was installed as part of the original construction, and that was set at the base of the dam, and that's essentially what the downstream elevation in the stream is today, and what we're proposing to maintain upstream from it. So I think it's the profile below the dam is pretty consistent. So I think it would be fair to interpolate that where that pipe was set was probably where the stream bed was originally.
Okay, so why would you go below where the stream bed was originally and take out any more sediment than just to the stream bed?
Well, it's a two-pronged benefit. One is that there's material there to repair the breach, and the other is that it does provide a depth, somewhat of a depth to the water there, and not impede flow going through. So the functions of the stream will remain.
So actually, ponds in streams are detrimental through thermal pollution. So excavating a pond is the same negative impact effectively as breaching or as damming the pond. And I don't think excavating the natural sediment of and the coarse base of a watercourse in order to fill something that was wrongfully created, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, streams are best left unexcavated.
This is Larry Liebman. I think that what we need to do is we need to match the stream bottom going upstream like it is matched below stream. And please afford us the opportunity to get that to you prior to the next meeting.
Good.
Sure. Okay, any other comments? Any questions from the agency?
Nope.
Do we have any public?
I'm sorry, yeah, I do actually have. If we are thinking about getting an outside consultant, and if that's still on the table, I would suggest that we have a very crisp remit for the person, addressing issues that we feel we cannot address, and looking at flow patterns, etc., that are critical to this, rather than an open-ended one.
Okay, agreed.
Is there any public comment or question on this application?
I do not see any hands raised.
Hi, this is Larry Liebman. So I think that what I'd like to do is I'd like to keep this focused so that this way then the next time we come before you, we have all of your questions answered. What I have written down is the elevations of the stream bed, the stability of the material used to fill the breach, and the planting plan is good is what I need to know if that's okay, or if we need to make any revisions to that. Obviously, we can tweak that at any given point in time. And, you know, I would want to know what we need to provide, if any additional information regarding to the outside consultant, if we're going to use one. Or if Mr. Marucci, which is your engineer, if he says and feels that, okay, now that he's looking at the numbers, that there's no difference. I want to bring out the point that the town, when they built that bridge, they didn't, in the pre-condition, the post-condition, and anything else, they didn't include that dam as part of any of the calculations. It was inconsequential to what they were doing, because they were backing up the water on the high side of Round Hill Road. So I want to keep it as close that we can get something moving, because I would like not to miss the opportunity to fix this situation and take the dam out and bring it back to what everybody wants it to be.
Fine.
Good.
Okay. So we're continued. Are there any other comments or questions from anybody?
Jay has a question?
Yes. What determines the width of the slot in the dam? Anybody?
Larry?
I'm trying, I'm talking to Peter Finkbeiner, who's here with me. Are you talking about the current condition or the proposed condition, Joe?
Proposed condition.
We believe that it would be a little bit larger than what the pipe is. So the pipe is a 12-inch diameter, so the notch would be bigger than 12 inches because we're taking that off.
But what's the what's the purpose of the what was the purpose of the 12-inch that you're matching at the bottom of the dam?
That's it, because it's an existing pipe that's there.
What does the pipe do?
The pipe is a low flow pipe, so that this way when the water got low, during low flow conditions, water always flowed through that pipe. We didn't put that pipe there. That pipe was there at the original part of the dam.
No, I understand that. So someplace upstream that pipe ends. I guess I'm just
It's only a 2-foot wide pipe. It's only a 2-foot long pipe, sir.
Say again.
It's only a 2-foot long pipe.
Ah,
Just the width of the dam, that's all it is.
And this is Bob Clossie. Larry Liebman mentioned to me in describing the new design that they thought that it would be less disruptive to leave the bottom of the pipe in place and just knock the top off than it would be to go down to the bottom of the spillway and pull that pipe out and probably rocks adjacent to it in an effort to maintain that stable point. But if I misstate that, Larry, please correct me.
No, that's correct. Thank you.
so the width of the opening at the bottom, which is where the pipe is, has nothing to do with the fish.
No, sir.
Okay.
Okay, let me make sure I'm getting a little confused. We're now going to have the balance of a dam with a notch cut into it so that the stream flows through the notch, right?
Yes.
Okay, and the physics of that says that the water flows through the notch faster than it flows down the stream.
Yes.
Okay, so you're increasing the speed of the water coming through that dam onto the other side. So why not take out the whole dam?
No, it would be the same as the existing pipe that's always been there. We're just taking the top off so there's no impediment because the fish don't like to go through the pipe.
But why do you think that they like to go through a 12-inch wide notch?
They can see daylight and they can go through it. It's not like it's the bottom is there. If that notch needs to be wider, if the agency is requesting that we make the notch wider, we can make that notch wider. We're taking out the dam. Theoretically, the dam is gone once we open it up.
Well, then why not remove the dam entirely? Why leave any part of it?
To minimize the impact to the channel.
You're willing to excavate 4 feet out of the channel.
Larry, you're not being entirely consistent.
I understand. As I've got multiple conversations happening all around me. I think that you're, Ms. Sesto, I think that you're right. We are saying that we would excavate out of the channel. The excavation out of the channel was part of the original prior to the agency, prior to the agency being in existence, there was an area that was there that was wider and deeper. And we were just trying to give something that was a semblance. I mean, the other thing, we're not taking out all of the whole entire dam. The spillway is an entirely different situation. We were trying to maintain the flows. By numbers alone, it's inconsequential. There's no difference if it overtops everything during the 1 year storm. It overtops during the 1 year storm by 5 inches, and during a 100-year storm by 7 inches. And so that means in the small, I don't know what we're trying to accomplish by going and saying, okay, that if we remove the entire spillway, how is that going to be different? The fish will be able to move back and forth. There's no cover over the water, so the fish don't get, as it's been told to us, that the fish don't want to go through pipes. And so what we were doing, we were just trying to create a balance.
Eric Brower, also, I think it's not as simple as just taking out the spillway. When that was built years ago, it's pretty much integrated into the channel on the west side, which is a series of retaining walls. And I think if we pull out the spillway or lower it, we're going to wind up jeopardizing the stability of that whole bank. So it's not an isolated activity. So we're trying to avoid what could turn into a major unintended consequence as opposed to just the channel itself.
I've got to admit,
What I'm hearing tonight is just it makes it difficult to understand if this plan is going to meet the intent. The intent, seem to be progressing properly, but I have not heard any qualified information to say that the fish need, a spillway of X dimension. I don't know what's the distance between the bottom of the notch and the water below, and then we've got a pipe underneath it. Is that going to make the tailwater a confusing attribute to the fish or not? Certainly when they go over, a 1 inch storm is 5 inches over the dam, and 100 years, 7 inches over the dam. I mean, it doesn't feel as though the decisions were made based on credible information of what fish need for passage. And then I'm hearing that we're going to excavate 4 feet out of the pond to make a pond above the spillway, and that number was drawn based on a volume of fill needed to fill in the adjacent bypass channel. And we don't know what the depth of the sediment is, and there doesn't feel like there's firm information that is driving the execution of intent.
This is Eric Brower again. So there's 2 separate issues. One, we heard definitely concern before there was a fish ladder that we're creating a number of problems with the fish potential migration pattern. So we know that many, many years ago when the dam was built, the pipe was there. And from the studies that were done on the Herbert Mayer subdivision, which is the old mill, then Mel Gibson's property, that there definitely were fish going up into that area above this dam. So this is a condition that's preferable to what was there before in terms of what the fish were facing. Was our understanding based on the feedback that we had gotten both from staff comments as well as Steve Gephardt, that the pipe, maintaining the pipe, was a bad idea. So our assumption is that this notch structure is sufficient. We would be glad to reach out with you as staff or alone to Steve Gephardt just to try to confirm that. So he had proposed the idea of the fish ladder if we were going to, elevate the dam. So that's out now, with the intent being to have that flow for migration be improved from what was there. Separately, you're right, we don't have all the data on the dredge, And that's on us to get that information to you as quickly as we can to confirm your concerns about the nature of it. Is it silty muck or is it gravelly sand, whatever, and what those quantities are. So that we can definitely do, and we would be happy to fine tune any details on that notch with Steve Geppert's input.
Okay. And on our end, Bob and I will work to swiftly engage a consultant so that we can nail all this stuff down.
Terrific.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm sorry, this is Joe again, Joe Rogers. No one's talked about flow velocities here. I mean, the DPW report I glanced at today that came through was talking about some velocities, I guess, that over the top of the dam that are pretty high. So, I mean, that's another factor that needs to be considered, presumably. I mean, the fish can only get up something that with a reasonable velocity against them. So has anyone done any calculations on that regard?
I can tell you that the,
You have to say who you are.
Peter Finkbeiner, I can tell you that the pipe with the top cut off will very closely mimic the weir drawings that came to us from the state for the fishway. So I can tell you up front that the open pipe concept, that is that V-notch that we're cutting into through the top of the pipe, very closely mimics the fishway that we got from the state. And then that was the approach that we took. And by making that a relatively large notch in the existing spillway, we're effectively disabling the entire dam in a manner that is friendly to the fish.
And so what were the flow velocities in the ladder? And how do they compare to these the velocities, you know, in the 1 year and 100-year storms?
We'll have to get that information.
Thank you.
Norma has her hand raised.
Yes. I just want to make sure that Steve Gephardt is aware of all of your concerns, Pat, and that he has an opportunity to respond to each and every one of them.
Thank you. Yep, we'll make sure.
Okay. Do we need a motion to continue or do we just continue?
I think we can continue to the next regularly scheduled meeting in July.
Very good. Then we can move on to 2020-13 and 2020-14, 8 Hickory Drive and 0 Hickory Drive. And I believe we've been dealing with those together in all the meetings we've had. So let's see, Mr. Causey?
Thank you. Since May 18th, we've, this is specifically for 8 Hickory Drive, which is the northern lot. Since the 18th of May, we've the file has been supplemented by the supplemental staff report I prepared on May 18th. DPW review comments from Scott Marucci, dated May 12th. A revised sediment and erosion control plan prepared by Soundview engineers and land surveyors, dated June 1st. And a revised wetland and buffer habitat enhancement planting plan prepared by William Kenny Associates, dated June 15th. So the vice chair is correct. We've been handling both of these together up till now, but if you don't mind, I think I'm just going to talk about 8 first and then 0.
That's fine.
Okay, so regarding 8, which is the northerly lot, the new plan, the current plan before you, it's on the screen, does not alter the watercourse in any way. Watercourse still winds behind the house and then down this steep hill toward Caroline Pond and the Byram River. The deck of the house has been reduced in size in response to comments from the agency. A boulder demarcation has been added to the plan, as you can see before you. The backyard area has been reduced by about 20%, or 750 square feet. This is only a little bit larger than the existing rough lawn that is present currently to the east of the watercourse. There will be a planted buffer between the lawn and watercourse, and the buffer will contain a berm so that water shedding off the lawn area, rather than going directly into the watercourse to the north, will be directed to the east and across a longer flow path through the woods before it gets to the watercourse. This will help to renovate any pollutants that runoff might carry. This is a very challenging parcel. The applicant has been responsive to agency comments. As you'll recall, the original proposal had the house sited well to the east of what's shown here. They now have the house at about the front wall location of the existing house. So they've pulled everything to the west, they've shrunk the deck. So that's what they've given us. The plan has also been revised as far as the erosion and sedimentation controls. These are much more appropriate for protecting the watercourse and associated wetlands. The DPW Engineering Division has reviewed the drainage design and has found it to be acceptable in concept. This is not unusual for the agency to approve a plan based with that sort of a comment, because the revisions and additional information needed, specifically requested by DPW, really don't pose any wetland concerns. They're more in the realm of revising calculations and things so that the plans, elevations, inverts shown in the plan match the drainage report, things like that. The system itself, basically they're saying the system is acceptable. It will work if it's installed as designed, but everything ought to be pulled together as far as the numbers go, so everything is linked. And let's see. Comments were raised about the number of trees to be removed. The revised plan does preserve a couple more of the big trees at the western end of this lot. Now, suggestion made by the director was that an arborist should be retained to look at these trees, especially the ones close to the development envelope, to see if they need some feeding or other preliminary strengthening, and also whether additional erosion controls or protective measures need to be installed to preserve the health of the trees. And any construction phase measures such as cutting roots rather than using a backhoe just to dig a hole and tearing the roots jaggedly are needed for any specific aspect of the proposed development. Finally, the wetland and buffer enhancement planting plan has been revised to reflect this, current engineer plan. So I have provided conditions of approval if the agency decides to close the public hearing and proceed with issuing an approval. I think the applicant has been quite responsive within the very tight constraints of this lot.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody from the applicant?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, agency members. For the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is our landscape architect, environmentalist Bill Kenny, and our professional engineer, Brian Muller. We've reviewed the proposed special conditions and have no issue with the recommendations that Mr. Clossy and the director have made, and we would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Do we have any agency comments or questions? Do we have any public comments or questions?
Cindy, I'm going to allow you to talk. If you can please state your name for the record before you begin. Cindy. Cindy, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There we
Can you
go.
hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Cindy Lyle, and my home at 28 Caroline Place is directly behind the proposed new development. I spoke at the February meeting to share my serious concerns over the applications, and I would like to strongly and clearly reiterate those concerns. I'm incredibly worried that changes to the existing landscape, grading, drainage will have an adverse effect on the amount of water that flows down to my property. A development of this magnitude with 2 large homes in this parcel is extremely troubling due to significant changes to the existing landscape that will be required to accommodate the construction of these homes. I urge you to consider the full impact of these applications on the current homeowners of Hickory Drive and Caroline Place. I respectfully ask that you ensure that our properties and the surrounding wetlands area are completely protected. If the applications are to be considered, this should include not only a thorough vetting of the plans presented, but also requirements for precise plan execution and stipulations for monitoring during construction and ongoing maintenance of the watercourse. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? We do not. Okay. I think we can probably close the hearing at this point if people agree with that.
Someone should make a motion to close if that's where you
Well,
choose.
I'd like to see somebody else make that motion.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Stephen Skolflis makes a motion.
Can I have a second, please?
Bill Galvin, second.
Okay, I'll run through our roll. So the motion is to close the public hearing. Bill Galvin.
Yes.
Stephen Skolflis.
Yes.
Where are all my attendees? Hang on. Gotta get to Klaus Yonder,
Yes.
Jay Shondorf,
Yes.
Joe Rogers,
Yes.
Elliot Benton,
Yes.
Norma Curlin.
Yes.
Have I missed anybody? Okay, thank you.
Okay, the motion, the applications, the public hearing is closed, sorry. Do we need time to discuss or can we arrive at a conclusion as we sit? I personally, I'm comfortable with what I see. Seems like the bases have been covered. So I'm ready to proceed. Can I have a sense of the agency, please? Klaus, what do you think?
I think we can go forward. My only question was, we were going to, in the beginning, we were going to be discussing both 8 and 0. We're now only voting on 8, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Joe, comments?
No, I'm fine.
Norma,
I'm fine.
Stefan?
Comfortable with the staff's Bob's comments.
Okay. Bill
I agree. Move forward.
and Jay.
Move forward.
Very good. Okay. So I guess at this point, I'd make a motion to approve with the staff comments and the staff conditions, special and regular conditions. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
second.
Stefan Scopolis, second.
And Ms. Sesto, if you would walk us through the voting, please.
Certainly. Norma Curlin,
Yes, approved.
Jake Schondorf,
Yes,
Bill Galvin,
Yes.
Klaus Yonder,
yes,
Stefan Scopolis,
Yes.
Elliot Benton,
Yes,
and have I missed anybody?
Hey, yes.
Joe, Lou Rogers, sorry, you're at the bottom of my screen. Okay, that's 700.
okay. And then we move on to 0 Hickory.
All right, before I begin discussing 0 Hemlock Drive, I noticed that among the attendees, there's some people who were involved with 2 of the consent approvals. Just to let them know that both 9 Dialstone and 510 Valley Road were approved out of order because of technical issues we had at the beginning of the meeting. Okay, having done that, 0 Hemlock Drive, since May 18th, we've added a supplemental staff report I prepared on May 18th to the file. We've added Mr. Marucci's site development review comments dated May 12th. This revised sediment and erosion control plan that's on the screen right now, which is dated June 1st, and the revised wetland and buffer habitat enhancement planting plan dated June 15th, prepared by William Kenny Associates. In addition, today we received a plan, highlighted plan from Mr. Hegney with some additional protective measures that I'll discuss in a second. And that plan was forwarded to the agency members as I received it today. So this application, again, we've gone through it a couple times. The house, deck, and driveway and retaining wall at the north side of the house are unchanged from the prior plan that the agency looked at. You know, if implemented properly, you know, the idea being that, you know, as they build this house, they really shouldn't be running back and forth over both parcels as they do one and the other. I really would like to see them do these individually, as though they're owned by 2 different people and you're not trespassing on your neighbor's property. So there really should be no direct wetland impacts because there are no wetlands or watercourses on this lot. However, the watercourse on the northerly lot starts right near the property line. And, you know, from experience, I've seen close proximity projects like this have construction phase impacts. And so, as I state in the staff report, my June 18th staff report here, there was an alternative presented to the agency at a prior meeting labeled Alternative B, in which the house was shown not 9 feet from the property line, but 26 feet from the property line, or from the brook rather. And that's an alternative, and you know, might be a more prudent and feasible alternative to ensure the watercourse is protected during construction. So that's one point. The erosion control measures have been improved versus the prior plan that we reviewed. In addition, today, Mr. Hegney sent a plan that indicates that a chain link fence, 6-foot high chain link fence, would be set along the northern property line. And then within that fence, you'd have the erosion controls so that they could be maintained and monitored and during the project. That's a very prudent measure. That reinforcement will, you know, it'll set a solid barrier between the 2 lots and might be a mitigating factor to the proximity of the proposed development to the brook. The DPW Engineering Division, as I said, has viewed the drainage and found it acceptable in concept. None of the outstanding additional information that they request has a real wetland bearing on our deliberations. They're quite minor, in fact. The eastern limit of lawn has been, now has a boulder demarcation. Right. And the eastern limit of lawn is closer to the house, i.e. less extensive than had been shown on the previous plan. The wetland buffer enhancement planting plan has been revised to reflect this and reflect the fact that a number of the large trees that had previously been proposed for removal are now shown to be protected and retained. In this case, that level spreader to the east of the house may have to be relocated because it's right at the base of two large oak trees. That, I believe, has been noted in the condition. If it isn't, we're going to have to add it, that they really have to get, well, they have to get an arborist in to look at the trees, and that would include looking at the plan to see if that's an appropriate place for the level spreader. So the agency may want to discuss the alternative. I have provided conditions of approval if you decide to close the hearing and proceed with an approval.
Good. Do we have any comments from the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, agency members, for the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. Bob referred to in his report and in his remarks to alternate B. This was a plan that we submitted to you at the May meeting and had more than just moving the house over. These are two large properties. The one that you approved at number 8 is a 40,000 square foot lot in the R12 zone. This particular property is 35,000 square feet. So you could add a number more lots than just the two that we're presenting to you. The alternate B created a smaller house on the lot fronting on Hickory Drive and created a rear lot with an access drive adjacent to the watercourse for a rear lot toward the eastern part of the property. And we showed this to indicate that there were alternatives that would result in significantly more development than what we're proposing. The house that we have on this southerly lot is one that is, again, modest in size. You could build over 9,000 square feet on this lot, and this is a 4,000 square foot house that's proposed. As Bob indicated, we're retaining more trees, we're reducing the lawn area, we've added demarcation features. Bill Kenny has put in a drainage function to prevent runoff from the lawn area to impact the watercourse and the wetlands. And we believe that this, as well as the one that you just approved, is a thoughtful and a responsive plan to what the issues were and the concerns expressed at earlier meetings. We've done the extensive drainage report so that actually we're reducing overall flows from what currently exists. And that took into account not only the property to the west and uphill in Greenwich, but also that portion in New York that's part of the watershed that comes down through this side on Hickory Drive. I understand the point that Bob's making, that if you have two houses going on at the same time, they end up being almost like one project. And in looking at the plan that I forwarded earlier today, perhaps to make this clear that these are two separate projects and that they're two separate construction envelopes, we would extend that 6-foot chain link fence all the way to Hickory Drive and extend it down past the, just past the level spreader, which is the area where we're putting in the sedimentation erosion controls, so that there is a clear barrier between the two, so that you don't have workers who may not be as sensitive to the environmental concerns traipsing through the wetland corridor behind the house number 8. We would certainly look to monitor that activity, and if you saw fit, include an environmental monitor for this construction to ensure that there is that separate and distinct construction for each of these properties.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the agency?
I actually have a quick comment. Brian Muller, Muller Engineering, a consultant on the project for Soundview. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
You're Alyssa, right?
Yes, I'm Alyssa. Yes. That's my wife. Yes. So a quick comment to add on to Mr. Hegney's comment about the chain link fence. I think that is very important to separate the projects and to protect that discharge point from that pipe. There really shouldn't be much machine tracking or any tracking for that matter over that pipe because it's going to be to remain. I'm just thinking to add on to the chain link fence, that proposed retaining wall there might be prudent to construct that as one of the first things, and that will act also as a type of barrier from any type of construction material going beyond, or equipment going beyond that point. And at that point, once that wall is in, maybe the chain link fence from Hickory can tie into that wall there, and then also from the back of the wall extend to that grouping of trees there. I also wanted to quickly comment on the level spreader on 0 here. I know it's really ingrained there in those 2 trees. I do think it is capable for us to do that by hand without having to break many roots. That level spreader is basically just a trench with gravel in it, so the roots could theoretically go through this trench, and we could do it as lightly as possible. The location of it is key because of the elevation of the house. The house is raised up as much as we really possibly can with the topography, and we need positive pitch for the footing drain, as well as that location with it being tucked so close to the property line. Typically, we wouldn't be allowed to put it that close to the property line, but Scott Marucci understands in my report, my drainage report, I talk about the flow paths, and there is a distinct change of watershed versus the 2 houses and the brook versus the backyard of 0, because the backyard of 0 discharges directly to Caroline Drive, and the majority of the upper part and the lower portion of 8 all discharge to the brook and enter the culvert that then discharges into Caroline Drive's drainage system. So it's essential to keep that level spreader tucked up in that area, and we might be able to push it uphill a little bit, but the key is to have the lip of it to be lower than the basement slab, so we don't get any backups or anything like that. But I do think it is capable to do that. I actually did one recently at a property that wasn't regulated by wetlands because the homeowner wanted to save the tree, and we managed to do it pretty well. And we'll see. It was just done a couple weeks ago, so I can't comment. I'm not an arborist either. So if there's any questions in regards to those aspects.
Brian, this is Pat Sesto. Based on the concerns that the downgrading Caroline Place neighbors have discussed, can you just run through the details of the infiltrator? What size storm will it handle, and at what size storm does that level spreader come into play?
Okay, let me just pull up the stormwater report quickly so that I can read the numbers of the decreases for every storm event.
Bob Clossy, while you're looking that up, Brian, if you were to build the wall first, would you have enough room around the south side of the house to get to the back of the property to do the work that would be required?
I think that I'd have to talk with whoever the client is going to be hiring for construction, but from my standpoint, we're building decks in the back. So you're not going to need heavy equipment back there once the foundation is dug. That drainage system, the deck, all the piles for the deck can all be dug with a mini excavator, which, you know, they're 60 inches. You can even get one that's 42 inches wide. So with the room on that side there, I believe we have 10 feet probably minimum. So you'd be able to fit a good sized mini excavator back there that will be able to install that drainage system, help with the deck structure. And I think the excavation can be done with a larger excavator moving in from the road and working from the back of the house foundation to the front and then pulling himself out of the hole. So I think that's how it should be accomplished for this property for sure. I don't think there needs to be much heavy machinery beyond, even on 8 either, in the backyard. I think that can all be done. You know, I know we already voted on it, but just in the concept, because, you know, these are, construction will be going on simultaneously. Both foundations won't go in at the same time. One will go in first, then the next one. So the crew can, or at least I'm just assuming this, the crew can move from one to the other. So it won't be double people, double parking, double all that. It has to go all in sequence. So I think the heavy machinery will mainly be stationed in the front yard.
Okay, so does that answer your question, Pat?
No, I think that answered Bob's question.
Bob's question.
Yep.
Brian, you're going to speak to the size, the infiltrator capacity.
Yes. So we analyzed 2 points of concern. One point of concern was the culvert, and I believe that is 28 Caroline. The culvert runs along that property line. Let me just Google it really quickly. Yes, it's 28 Caroline. That pipe runs right down the on her neighbor. If you're looking at her house from the road, her neighbor to the right, it runs right down the property line there. So we analyzed that as a point of concern. And then the other point of concern was in between 28 and 26 Caroline, which is basically the rear yard east of contour 84, let's say. That whole area back there is primarily wooded, and it's going to be maintained as wooded area. That has a separate watershed to 26 Caroline and the property line in between 28 and 26. Now, to point of analysis A, which is the more northern point between 28 and 30, I'm assuming 30, just confirm that. Yes, 30 Caroline Place. That storm event is being reduced by 2 to 3% for every single storm event. The 1-year storm was reduced by 2%, the 100-year storm by 3%. Typically, those percentages would be much higher, but because we analyzed about 5 acres of land upstream of that and up into New York, those numbers, it's kind of washes away the decrease in reality of just these 2 lots if you analyze them alone. But that was still the point. We wanted to analyze the whole thing and make sure that we're not changing any velocities in the brook, which we proved. We're actually decreasing a bunch of the velocities in the brook just by retaining more water from our properties on the property. From an aspect of overflow to the level spreader, let me just open up my drainage model so I don't have to search through the report. That is the 100 HDs. So for this event, water will only be discharged to the level spreader, but will not breach the level spreader for the 100-year storm. So that Coltech system in the back above the retaining wall there can store the 25-year storm, and it doesn't start to overflow until the 50 and 100-year storm.
Okay, so in layperson's terms, once the site is stabilized, meaning grass is in, all these stormwater features are in, the downstream or down gradient neighbors should feel or perceive no difference in the amount of water that's flowing through their properties. Is that fair?
That's a correct assessment. That's what I've come up with. And, you know, it's essential to get the systems in. As soon as the roof leaders go in, I always tell all the contractors, get that stuff in sooner rather than later, and fence them off so you don't drive machinery over it. The Coltechs in the backyard are in a good position because we're not going to be really bringing heavy machinery back there. The porous asphalt driveways in the front, you can drive over that with heavy machinery, so we're not too worried about that. But those systems, you know, all should be installed as soon as possible on the property, especially it depends on what time of year they'll be constructed and the house will be constructed. But if it's, you know, I see it all the time, houses constructed during a rainy season in the spring where they start, typically you'll see, you know, some erosion in places because the drainage isn't there. So it is really essential to check up on the erosion controls, make sure there's hay bales in place, make sure that, you know, any runoff doesn't just shoot down the slope to the neighbors. And we will be all over this to make sure of that. Because this is, I think this is a very good project from a lot of different aspects of where we're trying to go with the town on all future projects. So I really like to try to make an example out of this one.
Thank you. Tom, a question. You have pointed out that the alternative B was shown just as a way to demonstrate that you'd have to have a smaller house in order to get the access to the rear lot. But what the preferred plans are slightly larger homes, but in exchange, the back portion of these oversized lots remain wooded and untouched. If the agency accepts that promise, what is there legally that keeps that promise intact, and that 2, 5, 10 years from now, the neighbor to the south doesn't realign and have property line revisions so that in fact a house does end up going in the back?
You have the rear portions or the easterly portions of both of these lots are really in an amazing forest in a somewhat urban environment. It's really terrific to walk through there. We did look at that and perhaps thought that providing some type of conservation easement on the easterly portion of this lot would be appropriate. We didn't think, frankly, on number 8, the northerly lot, that was really either warranted or frankly necessary, because you already had the wetland corridor there and the watercourse. And so developing that portion of it, given the location of that watercourse, would be extremely difficult. And you can actually see from the alternate B that we put together that's what we would use as the open space parcel, because it's not really that area that you would develop. But I could see your point on on wanting to ensure that you don't have a third lot developed sometime in the future, given the size of these parcels. And if you were to take something along contour 48 or 50, which cuts about a quarter of the rear or easterly portion of lot 0, the southerly lot, and created a conservation easement area for that.
Why wouldn't you push?
Where that very large tree is in the center on the easterly portion of the lot. It's approximately there.
The one then that looks like a rock outcropping above it.
Yes.
Would you be amenable to moving a line further west so that discussions of clearing and increased lawn and things like that are off the table for future property owners?
Well, our lawn area is pretty far away, and we reduced that some size with the demarcation features.
Agreed. So I'm just trying to help that intent be perpetually executed.
Well, I was really thinking more about how do you go about preventing a third lot from being developed in the future?
Agreed.
I think using this as contour 50, 52, 54, right where that large tree and the rock outcropping, as you pointed out, would accomplish that because it eliminates a significant
Move it
portion
to
of that lot.
the east, move it east.
Yeah,
Keep
no,
going, keep
yeah,
going, keep going.
no,
Right
that-
there,
that
right
one right there.
straight down from there. Move up a little.
There you go.
Right
Yay.
through there.
It's that very large tree right smack in the middle of the property.
And that's contour 52, 54?
54.
54.
Yes.
Brian Muller speaking.
Thank you, Brian.
And we
Or
did
Alyssa.
talk to the property owner about that. He understands the concern and would be agreeable with that conservation easement covering that portion of the property.
Great, thank you.
Just as a curiosity, does that render the rest of the lot indivisible? Mr. Hegney?
I'm just looking at the math on it, and we have roughly 35,000 square feet. We're taking probably 12,000 square feet away, which would eliminate the ability without significant variances to do that. The other thing I would add is you'd also need a frontage variance, even if you were putting in an access way, because the northerly lot is one that has 100 feet of frontage and the southerly lot only has 80, and you're required to have 80 feet of frontage in this zone. So
You had a cooperating lot to the south. I mean, I'll say that we've seen some variances granted for stuff that is shocking.
I see what you're saying. Brian Muller talking.
I think that the lot area variances, particularly in this neighborhood where all the lots are conforming or much larger in size, is really the determining factor on whether you could develop a third lot or not.
What is the minimum lot size in this area?
12,000 square feet.
So if you take more, and you've got 35,000, so you need to take at least 12,000 square feet.
Right. Yep. Yep, that does it.
And does the tree line, the contour 54, do that?
I think it's close. If you wanted to say that the conservation easement area had to cover 12,000 square feet, I think that does it from a standpoint of being able to remove the ability to have any development in this area.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any comments or questions from the agency? Okay, do we have any public comment or question for Zero Hickory? Okay. Can I have a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing, Norma.
Second, Joe.
Okay, we'll run down our list. Close the hearing. Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Joe Rogers,
Yes.
Elliot Benton,
Yes.
Klaus Yonder,
Yes.
Jay Shondorf,
Yes.
Bill Galvin,
Yes.
Stefan Skofilis.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we need time to discuss this, or are we comfortable that we can make a decision?
So if the agency is inclined to approve, I believe we'd need an additional special condition that a conservation easement will be placed on the eastern portion of the lot at contour 54 or at 12,000 square feet, whichever is greater.
Yes.
Okay, do we need an additional special condition relative to extending the chain link fence?
Bob, I think that can be generally the first special condition. That can be incorporated into that.
Yeah, but I think we want to take Mr. Mueller up on his offer to put that wall in first.
Okay, so that would be the second revision, which would be to alter the construction sequence to ensure that the retaining wall is installed early on in the construction sequence, and that the chain link fence be shown from Hickory Drive connecting to the retaining wall and then down to the level spreader.
Would there be another condition regarding the construction of the level spreader and protection of the trees?
That in your thing, Bob?
I thought that was part of the arborist, getting an arborist retained and involved in the process from all the aspects related to those large trees that they are showing to be kept.
It's fine.
And if I recall, the Mr. Hegney offered an environmental monitor.
He did?
He did.
He did. So, do you want to put that under the arborist, or shall we have another special condition for this one?
I think that would constitute a different monitor than the arborist.
Okay. So tell us where it should go.
I would have a special condition that a monitor would be engaged by this agency, paid for by the applicant, to inspect the site. Well, this is just Zero Hickory. So to inspect Zero Hickory weekly or prior to a storm event, which is ever more frequent, and then discussion with the agency staff to lengthen that time as the project progresses.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
Can I have a motion to approve with those additional special conditions, please?
So
Motion.
moved.
I think that was Bill.
Bill, yep.
Second, Joe.
Joe second. Okay, run through my squares. Klaus Yonder,
Yes.
Jay Shondorf,
Yes.
Bill Galvin,
Yes.
Joe Rogers,
Yes.
Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Stefan Skofilis,
Yes.
and Elliot Benton.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much. New applications for review, and
I just will say that, Cindy, I believe your hand was raised after the hearing was closed, and the agency can no longer take public comment at that time. Our apologies.
Very good. I see no pending applications on the agenda. And the next is 7 Dublin Hill Drive, 2020-015, Onaman Kirby for William and Ann Nisel to maintain repair of pond spillway within the wetlands. Okay.
Okay, so the applicant's, what's that? Okay, the applicant's proposing to maintain an unauthorized replacement of a pond dam spillway that had varying heights with a level and slightly raised dam spillway. The overall width of the dam has remained the same. The dam had been 120.81 feet in the middle and 121.66 feet at the sides. It's been reconstructed to a level of 121.13 feet consistently across, which has raised the elevation of the pond 2.7 inches. The stormwater report that was provided states that the pre and post work hydrology remains unchanged and that there haven't been any impacts to the neighboring properties as a result of the work. The report also states that the repair had not had a significant effect on the peak flows and volumes that were seen at the dam. DPW Engineering Division has reviewed and approved the drainage summary, found it acceptable. The homeowner indicated that the pond had been stocked with rainbow trout. Per Connecticut Deep's Bureau of Natural Resources, Inland Fisheries Division, a permit is necessary when stocking a water body with fish. So therefore, a permit should be sought and issued by the state, and proof of that should be issued to the agency. The Connecticut Dam Safety has also determined the hazard classification for the dam to be AA, which is a negligible hazard, and therefore it's under town jurisdiction. The owner was issued a dam registration form by Connecticut Deep requesting that the dam be registered. We should also receive a copy that has been completed prior to closing out this permit and returning the bond. A staff report for a permit that was issued in 2016 for the pond to be dredged that was prepared by Robert Clossy stated in 2001 permit included a planting plan at the northwest and southwest sides of the pond, which left an 80-foot wide strip of grass down to the pond directly behind the house. During his inspection, there were no remnants of these plantings found during his inspection. Staff recommended that the applicant's agent provide a plan that gave a 15-foot wide planting native buffer along the west side of the inlet watercourse and around the west side of the pond where the areas are currently maintained as lawn. The required installation of these plantings were erroneously omitted from that 2016 permit conditions. So now staff's recommending that a planting plan be provided that consists of a minimum of 13 stations at the southwest side of the pond in an area approximately 75 feet by 30 feet and a 14 planting stations at the northwest side of the pond. That area would be 20 feet by 95 feet. And that's indicated on the permit plan dated November 19th, 1992, and was revised January 18th, 1999. Each of these stations should consist of 3 to 5 shrubs or 1 native shade or understory tree based on the agency's mitigation planting plan guidelines. It's recommended that the agency issue an order with the conditions that are provided in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a representative for the applicant? You've got one with a raised hand.
Yeah, Keith Werner would be the representative.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello.
We can hear you, Keith.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, Keith Werner here from Ornamental Kirby, representing Ornamental Kirby and the applicant. We prepared this application for a permit after the fact, after a notice of violation was issued to the owners here. And yeah, this is more of a record map based on the work that had been previously performed to the spillway at the for the dam at 7 Dublin Hill Drive. The work resulted in the reconstruction of a dysfunctional dam spillway for the dam that was at 7 Dublin Hill Drive for his pond, and rebuilt it with a beveled edge, constant elevation spillway. We went through the process of preparing a drainage summary report and stormwater management report for DPW engineering, which they reviewed, and we worked hand in hand with them to develop the results. We included the 2008 Strickland Brook study data for this drainage corridor, and we're able to conclude that there will be no negative impacts to the drainage corridor after this work was completed compared to the previous conditions. We've had a chance to review the staff report both internally and with the owners, and we have no objections to the recommendations made by staff.
Very good. Do we have any comments or questions from the agency for the applicant? No cost. Very good. Do we have any comments or questions from the public? I see no raised hands. Very good. Can I have a motion on this one, please?
Motion to approve.
I'll second Joe Rogers.
Motion to approve was by Stefan Skouflis. Pat, you are muted.
That worked. Here we go. Okay. I have the motion by Stefan and second by Joe, with no alterations to the conditions of the order that were presented by Doreen.
Correct.
Okay. So running through, Klaus Yonder,
Approve.
Jay Shundorf,
Approved.
Bill Galvin,
Approved.
Joe Rogers,
Approved.
Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Stefan Skouflis,
Yes.
Elliot Benton.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. 700.
Thank you, everybody.
And moving on to 2020-055, 94 Pexland. Let's see, who's this one? Doreen again. Doreen, you're muted. Doreen.
I will start again. I was muted, sorry. All right, so this is a corrective application in response to a stop work order. It was issued due to the removal of old foundation walls and site grading that was about 8,300 square feet adjacent to a pond and wetland on the south side of the property. The applicant's also requesting to reconstruct approximately 200 feet of existing stone wall along the roadway and to remove 2 standing dead trees by hand. The area where the foundation walls had been removed have been graded to match the surrounding contours and has been seeded. The applicant has clarified that the stone wall to be reconstructed along the roadway will be dry laid and will not require any excavation. The existing opening along the south central wetland will be maintained. The proposed fruit trees should be installed during the 2020 fall planting season. Regarding the trees that are proposed to be removed, one of the trees in the wetland appeared to be living, and the second one hadn't leaked out at the time of the inspection, which was at the end of May. The living tree should be maintained and the dead one can be topped and maintained. However, if the agency authorized their removal, they should be replaced 1-to-1 with native shade trees, 2 to 2.5 inch in caliper. So staff's recommending the agency issue an order with the conditions provided in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a representative from the applicant?
Larry? Let's see, Larry, you're now a panelist and you can unmute yourself. Oh, I think I got the wrong one. Sorry, Alan. We're gonna put you back. Okay. So Larry, you should be all set. Larry, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Larry Liebman from SE Minor representing the applicant. We have no objection to what's written in the order.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this? I'm sorry, is there any agency comments or questions on this first? Are there any public comments or questions on this application? Given the silence, I would ask for a motion.
Motion, this is Joe Rogers. Motion to issue an order with the special conditions listed.
Second, please.
Bill Gav-
Bill Gavin with the second. Okay, running down our list. Elliot Benton,
Approved.
Stephen Skofilis. Stefan. Is that a yes, Stefan?
You're muted.
He's muted, but Stefan is shaking his head yes.
Yes, yes, it's Stefan approved.
Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Joe Rogers,
Yes.
Bill Galvin,
Yes.
Jay Shorndorf,
Yes.
Klaus Yonder.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. Last but not least amongst the applications, 35 Copper Beach Road, 2020-057, Murphy Brothers Landscaping for Ryan and Allison Willingham for replacing septic system and remove rebuilt front porch. Mr. Clausy.
Hi, Bob Clossy. This application, these folks just moved in recently, and apparently before they moved in or as part of their discovery, they had the septic system checked, and 3 different installers felt that the existing system was impaired. This application was submitted as an emergency permit for a failing system. And so it's sort of been in limbo for a month because I've been ready to issue an emergency approval to fix it. But the health department has tested it and has not failed it. So now it's before you for review. The proposed leaching gallery is shown 40 feet from the wetland, which is further away than the closest of the existing trenches. And I asked the installer, did you test the soil anywhere else, like in the backyard to the south of the pool? And Mr. Murphy said that they tested everywhere, and the soils where they have the system designed are the best on the property. So I would recommend the agency issue a permit. We're getting a little bit more separating distance between the pond and the effluent. It's in the best soils on the property. It does not meet the old guideline setback for a septic, but you know, it's also up to the health department, and if they feel this is appropriate, I believe they do, because they're just waiting for us to move on it. This is where the system needs to go. So I'd recommend the agency issue a permit with the conditions provided in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have anybody from the applicant? Nobody from the applicant. Okay.
Bob, do you recognize anybody for the applicant? No. Okay.
Bob, you said in your report here that the applicant proposes to remove and rebuild the existing open front porch. Where?
Yeah, that's where the, right near Doreen's hand on the plan, there's a cross-hatched area. So that's further back from the new leaching gallery.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any questions for Bob from the agency? Do we have any public comments or questions? I see no hands. Very good. Can I have a motion on this, please? All right, I'll make a motion to approve. Excuse me.
I'll second that, Joe Rogers.
Thank you. Okay, Klaus Yonder,
Move.
Elliot Benton,
Yes.
Joe Rogers,
Yes.
Stefan Schofield,
Yes.
Norma Curlin, Norma,
Yes.
thank you. Jay Shondorf,
Yes.
Bill Galvin.
Yes.
Did I get everybody? Good, 700.
Very good. Violations. Cease and correct order 2018-017-225 Stanwich. Doreen? Or who's taking this?
Green, you're muted.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to read in the record of documents.
I'm sorry,
225
sorry.
Stanwich Road.
Sorry, I have to recuse myself from this one because I'm a personal friend of the Hempelmans. So as I understand it, I'm going to mute and stop the video as a recuse.
And Jay, I'll drop you down to an attendee. I mean, Joe, sorry.
Okay, well, application 2019-73, order 2019-007, dated July 22nd, 2019, to Salvatore Triano and Robert Clossie. Letter to Philip and Colleen Hempelman from Doreen Carol Andrews, dated August 28th, 2019. Email chain dated August 18th, 2019, between Doreen Carol Andrews, Robert Clossie, Salvatore Triani, Alexander Levy, and Ronald Steinberzel. Email chain dated October 31st, 2019, between Doreen Carol Andrews, Salvatore Triano, and Ronald Steinberzel. Email chain dated November 18th, between Kayla Frankel, Bill Kenny, and Doreen Carol Andrews. Email dated November 27th, 2019, from Doreen Carol Andrews to Colleen Hempelman. Letter to Philip and Colleen Hempelman dated February 7th, 2020. Email chain between Kayla Frankel, Salvatore Triani, and Doreen Carol Andrews. Letter to Philip and Colleen Hempelman dated May 19th, 2020. Violation summary dated June 9th, 2020. And cease and correct order 2020-04 issued June 15th, 2020. Okay, so staff had been notified by the owners of 225 Stanwich Road that the neighbors located at 8 Dublin Hill Drive have removed vegetation along the dam and deposited construction debris in the wetland near the eastern end of the dam, which was located on their property. A site inspection to 8 Dublin Hill Drive also found that there was extensive removal of understory vegetation around the property that included wetland and watercourse areas. A stop work orders were issued to both of the property owners with the understanding that the work on both of the properties had been done by the owners of 8 Dublin Hill Drive. Cease and correct orders 2018-16 and 2018-17 were sent to the property owners by regular and certified mail in December 2018. The agency reviewed the restoration plan that was provided in an application to correct the violation at both 8 Dublin Hill Drive and 225 Stanwich Road at the agency meeting that was held August 26, 2019. However, at this time, the Hempelmans had not provided consent for the application to be submitted on their behalf. And the restoration work proposed and on their property couldn't be completed. The agency ended up issuing issuing the order to correct to implement the restoration activities on 8 Dublin Hill Road, and passed a motion to resume enforcement for the unauthorized activity that occurred at 225 Stanwich Road. It was noted and understood that there would be some delays acquiring direction from Connecticut Dam Safety Program, and staff had requested any updates or information that they obtained from DEEP. The Hempelmans of 225 Stanwich Road are represented by Salvatore Triani, LLC. Concerns that the Hochbergs would not allow access through the, in order to do the corrective work on the dam. According to Mr. Triano, there had also been extensive delays presenting a plan to the Connecticut DEEP Dam Safety Program based on limited or perceived limited access to the dam by way of access through 8 Dublin Hill Road. An outline of the required corrective actions is needed from Connecticut Dam Safety Program in order to develop a corrective application to present to the Wetlands Agency. He further stated that there had been no comments on or approval of the cooperation agreement that 225 Stanwich Road developed and presented to 8 Dublin Hill Drive in August of 2019. The cooperation agreement recognized the temporary access through 8 Dublin Hill Drive. A copy of this agreement was sent to staff on Friday, June 19th, and was forwarded to the agency members this morning. The Hochbergs of 8 Dublin Hill Drive are represented by Bill Kenny of William Kenny Associates LLC, and now also by Tom Hegney of Hegney, Lennon, and Slane LLP. He has confirmed that the cooperation was received and that the Hochbergs wanted to meet with the Hempelmans personally before signing the agreement. Both Mr. Triano and the Hempelman's attorney, Ronald Steinverzel, were made aware, and they were also made aware that the Hochbergs were willing to do corrective actions to correct the violation. The Hochbergs have attempted to contact the Hempelmans directly on numerous occasions. Staff has also reached out to the Hempelmans by email and regular mail with no response. In these correspondences, the Hempelmans were also made aware that if they didn't grant authorizations, be responsible for correcting the. Staff has contacted Yvonne Hall at DEEP's Connecticut Dam Safety Program regarding what has been submitted by the Hempelmans to date and what's required to secure a dam safety program permit. According to the email that was received on June 11th from Anna Laskin, who's a civil engineer for the Connecticut DEEP, there are currently no pending applications and no records of any previous applications, but that the removal and cutting of woody vegetation is authorized under the Dam Safety General Permit and is a non-filing category. According to the Connecticut DEEP Dam Safety Regulation Program, the removal of all trees and other woody vegetation on or within 25 feet of the dam is a requirement. Also, the dam is due for a regular inspection by a professional civil engineer licensed in Connecticut during the 2020 calendar year. The statute allows that they have until March 15th, 2021 for the report to be submitted before it's considered being late. This inspection is not associated with the current violation. So at this time, what's required is we need the Hempelmans to submit authorization to the Hochbergs, allowing them to submit an application that is prepared, agreed to by both parties to the Wetlands Agency on their behalf. Feedback is required from the Connecticut Dam Safety Program, detailing what, if anything, is necessary to restore the area around the dam, and giving us basically an outline to be provided to the Wetlands Agency for that restoration. At minimum, the corrective action for the unauthorized activity which occurred around the dam would be the removal of construction debris in the wetland near the eastern end of the dam and restoration of the disturbance with native herbaceous vegetation. I understand that there was a meeting today between both parties, and so hopefully there's been some progress made that they will report to us. But at this time, staff is recommending that the agency maintain the cease and correct order and recommends that a certificate of violation be filed on the land records and the issue referred to the law department if written authorization isn't provided by July 15th, 2020, that allows the Hochbergs to submit a corrective application to the Wetlands Agency on behalf of the Hempelmans. As an alternative, the Hempelmans may also submit an application on their own behalf.
Thank you very much. Do we have comments from the representative for the applicant? I see Mr. Hegney has his hand up. And Ron Steinbruzel has his hand up.
You're muted, Pat. There you go.
Both Tom and Ron have been promoted to panelists and they can unmute themselves. I just wanted to state, so I don't believe that we can actually issue an order for failure to provide authorization. I think this would be an order for maintaining a violation for 225 Stanwich Road. I think is really technically where, I mean, I know this is sort of the problem, but I don't think this is an actual violation. I think the violation is maintaining violation. That's a point of clarification.
Okay, Mr. Hegney, are you representing the Hochbergs?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, agency members, for the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. As Doreen indicated, we were having a meeting today, and we actually did have a meeting. Mr. Hochberg was able to attend, Bill Kenny on his behalf. Also was at the meeting, as was Ron and their engineer, Sal Triano. I think it was a very constructive meeting. We learned a good deal. We found out what Mr. Triano will need to prepare that plan for submission to the state DEP. And we'll be getting that to him hopefully tomorrow so that he can prepare sketches as to how the dam reconstruction would be accessed from the Hochberg property, so that we would have an idea as to how that construction would be. As Doreen indicated, Bill Kenny had prepared a restoration plan. Now that we have learned more about what is permitted or not permitted in front of or within 25 feet of the dam, that will certainly need to be revised based on what we received from Mr. Triano. So I think that the July 15th date for being in a position to proceed with this one way or the other is appropriate, and we plan to return to you prior to that date so that the agency can review a revised restoration plan proposed for this area. It was a very cooperative meeting between the parties, and I think established a good framework for moving forward with this.
Thank you. Mr. Steinbruzel, do you want to say something?
Yes, thank you. I agree with.
State your name for the record, please.
Oh, sorry, Ron Steinbruzel and Levy, White Plains, New York. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do want to concur with Mr. Hegney. We did meet. I do think it was productive. But I very much, first and foremost, want to address the weight of the situation here, if I may. This situation reads as if there is a bad acting and recalcitrant property owner who committed these violations themselves, and that's really the farthest thing from the truth. I think you'll find in the Hempelmans the greatest stewards of their environment, and having surrounding them similarly minded professionals. And I mean myself the least of that, and not that I'm not, but Mr. Triano and Mr. Benny, who have been stewarding this property for many, many years, are similarly dedicated. Briefly, as to any communications that have not been responded to from the town, from the board, I'm sure Mr. Triano will agree, we are unaware of those. As to any communications that were not responded to by the Hempelmans from the Hochbergs directly, there was one letter that was sent to which there was some indirect response, but we're not aware of anything like that. There is no recalcitrance here.
Mr. Steinwurzel. How we got to the point we're at is of little interest for us as a wetlands agency. The fact that you've reached an agreement to move forward, I think, is all that's really germane to the current situation. So thank you very much for your comments.
We have not, sir, reached an agreement, I would say, to move forward. What we have had was finally, after a lot of effort on the part of the Hempelmans, was to have a dialogue with the Hochbergs for the very first time after many attempts to do so.
What will it take to get an agreement so that we can move forward?
What it will take is the Hochbergs agreeing not to do a minimum required restoration, but rather something that is more in line with what was taken away from the Hempelmans. Now, I know we can't ask the town to get in a dispute between two neighboring property owners, but we do not want to be put in a position where we must acquiesce to a plan that the Hochbergs only approve and to provide them access to implement that plan.
That, I believe, is pretty much out of our hands. The problem being, as I understand it, and Pat, I'm sure you'll correct me, that if there is not some application submitted, there will be a notice of violation on the land records, and it will be for the Hempelmans, because that's where the problem lies. So it behooves the two of you to come to a conclusion, the two of you being Mr. Hegney and Mr. Steinwurzel, to come to a conclusion as soon as possible. And we look forward to seeing an application that you have developed together.
Well, I hope to be able to do so, but I do appreciate having heard that simply an application needs to be submitted, because as between submitting an application that proposes a plan unacceptable to the Hempelmans and the Hempelmans simply submitting their own plan, the Hempelmans will have to submit their own plan and deal with the issue as between private parties themselves, of course.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mr.
And I hope that that's understandable and not trying to be confrontational, but to the contrary, I say again, it is the Hempelmans who here are the greatest stewards of this environment and really simply want to restore what they have worked so long to create and maintain.
Thank you, Mr. Steinwurzel. Mr. Hegney, do you have any final comments?
Just that I did find the meeting today to be very helpful, and we're looking to move forward with a plan that we can present to you.
Thank you. I see you've promoted Mr. Triano. Does he want to make comments? Ms. Sessa?
No, Mr. Triano had his hand raised and his name was brought up by legal counsel, so I promoted him to panelist so that he could unmute himself and add what he felt he needed to add.
Good evening, folks. This is Sal Triano from Crossland Engineering. I represent the Hempelmans at 225 Stanwich Road. You know, as Tom and Ron mentioned, we had a fairly productive telephone meeting today. One of the most important aspect of it is that we are supposed to get a site survey from the the Hochbergs that we can actually use to develop a plan to provide some access and some orientations as to the limits of work that could potentially be done and still be in full compliance with the Connecticut DEEP requirements. We, Crossland Engineering, that is, committed to turning that around in about a week and a half. So as soon as we get that document from, from the Hochbergs, we'll get a move on that. And that's the only item that may, of course, delay things in. It would be my inability to hit that deadline if I don't receive it in an adequate period of time. But we are committed to providing and producing, a site access plan that depicts limits so that then the planting plans can be developed. So if we start thinking about it from today's date being the 22nd, if we get things, tomorrow, that would put us into the first full week of July. I don't know if it's going to be prudent or practical for William Kenny to pull something together as far as an adjustment to his plan. We have not gotten to that part of the discussion as of yet. So again, timing might not hit that 15th of July deadline, just based on a realistic schedule from both myself and from Bill Kenny.
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that Soundview Engineers has a topographic survey of the area involved here, and we'll be in touch with them tomorrow morning to make sure that they get a CAD of that to Mr. Triano, so they'll have that to work with, and that would be done. That will be done tomorrow.
Thank you.
That's again fantastic. I just want to make sure that the board understands that there's a two-party component to get something that would even be representable for a layout or limits for the work that could actually be produced.
That's fine. Do we have any other comments or questions from other members of the agency? Okay. Are there any public comments on this? Okay. Then I would make a motion to maintain the cease and correct and follow the staff recommendation. Can I have a second on that?
Second.
Second.
So is Bill Galvin seconding?
Yes.
Okay, run through Klaus Yonder,
Yes.
Jay Shondorf,
Yes.
Bill Galvin,
Yes.
Norma Curlin,
Yes.
Stefan Skopoulos,
Yes.
Elliot Benton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay. 24 Stillman Lane, John and Kristen Lemondola, unauthorized clearing of trees.
I have Bob Clossy on behalf of Jen Urena, who did the violation summary. This is a clearing situation. The 24 Stillman Lane parcel was part of the Stillman Lane subdivision and was not required to get a wetlands permit when it was developed because it was, sufficiently far away from the surrounding wetlands, both on an adjacent property, two adjacent properties, including East Line Farm. There's a pond. But the whole back of this lot was pretty much cleared and grubbed. We went out there last week and issued a stop work order on the site. The tree company that had taken down 2 trees had not done the clearing and grubbing of the other areas. So the property owner has been very responsive. They've retained the services of a landscape architect who's preparing an application per the recommendation in the violation summary. And I think this will should move very quickly to a resolution. but Ms. Urena recommends that the agency at this time maintain the cease and correct order and authorize filing a certificate of violation on the land records if this application is not received by August 3rd.
Very good. Do we have anybody for the applicant, I guess?
Any hands?
For what?
I see no hands. Very good. Do we have any questions for Bob from the agency? Can I have a motion?
Move to approve. Halcyon, move to approve the violation report.
You're moving to retain the cease and correct and require the application?
Yes.
I'll second.
Stefan Scopola, second. There's no discussion. I'll do the roll call. Okay, Klaus Yonder,
Approve, yes.
Jake Schondorf,
Yes.
Bill Galvin,
Yes.
Norman Curlin,
Yes.
Stefan Scopolis,
Yes.
Elliot Benton,
Yes.
Joe Rogers. Oh, we didn't get him back. Hey, come back, Joe.
Joe has his hand, there he goes.
So the record should reflect that Joe was able to hear all of that. Joe, if you want to unmute yourself, are you in favor?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Very good. We have two items of other business. 2017-154-82 Buckfield Lane will be followed by 0 Aiken Road. Okay, let's do Buckfield Lane. Who's handling that on the staff? Is that you, Doreen?
Doreen.
Doreen is muted and frozen
Okay,
and gone.
and she's gone. Okay, so then I shall take over. At the last meeting of the agency, there were some outstanding issues associated with a fence that was put up alongside the property. The original permit had it running and then turning to the pond on the north side of the shed. Staff made, at the request of the applicant, to continue the fence straight down the property line. Staff determined that that was a field change and approved it as such. The neighbor was, Alan Small has raised the issue that in fact that should not have been considered a field change and has requested the agency weigh in on that. Additionally, other issues were raised at the last meeting, being that that fence was installed with concrete footings and that there is now netting in order to block the 6-inch gap so that that fence could be considered a pool fence. Doreen and I did inspect the property. We did not see evidence of the piers or the footings of the fence to be installed in concrete. I literally walked down the entire line. I didn't see anything sticking out. I didn't go digging, looking for them. This was something that was represented by the applicant in their own narrative that no concrete would be used. This was not a condition of the agency, but it was part of the documentation nonetheless. The fencing does have the mesh blocking the bottom 6 inches, but every other panel does have a hole in it consistent with staff directive to allow small animals to go back and forth. So that was consistent with the staff directive as well. So as far as I'm concerned, that fence is in compliance with what the staff has directed or otherwise authorized as a field change.
Okay. Any comments from the agency?
I just have a question. It's Bill Galvin. When we started discussing this a while ago, I must have missed, what was the rationale behind the field change? Why was the field change made as it was made? What was the
So
thinking?
the applicant came in and wanted, instead of having that back sliver of their property disconnected from the rest of their property via the fence, they felt that just having it run straight down the property line was preferable. So when we determine if something qualifies as a field change versus a change that needs a new permit, or I guess it's a field change or it needs a new permit, there's really nothing in between. We evaluate if that change meaningfully diverges from the intent of the agency, or if there had been some dialogue that the agency had specifically wanted, in this case, a fence in a particular location. So whether the fence went straight down the property line or took a right angle of sorts and met the pond edge, ecologically speaking, or as far as wetland protection goes, doesn't matter one way or the other. And there was no discussion by the agency when the fence was originally approved to suggest that this location was a particular location that the agency was looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Pat, let me understand. You say there are holes in the mesh every 16 feet?
That's correct.
Is that really adequate for the critters to get through? That they have to run up and down the fence till they find a hole?
They would have to run up and down the fence till they find a hole.
Wait,
Elliot's going to be out there with a miner's light checking.
So I will say, we know that amphibians will, when they are met with something that blocks them, they will run down along parallel with fence, because that's how we trap them in amphibian traps. Will some turtles be impeded by this? Yes, certainly a snapping turtle's not getting through a 3-inch gap. We know that. But the fence does go straight into, so it's really, there's two issues. Doreen is back. There's two issues. Whether this fence should have the mesh at the bottom so that it can be considered a pool fence is a different question than its actual configuration. So we should probably keep those two pieces separate.
well, it strikes me that since we're asking everybody else in the entire town to keep a complete 6-inch gap under their fences, that should be the same for this applicant as well. And how long will it take a turtle to walk 8 feet?
Oh, depends. I don't know. There's a
I mean,
big
that's
one,
the average.
a little one.
That's the average they'd have to walk to get to a hole.
Put that on the next agenda.
I expect.
I think there's a riddle in there somewhere.
Children's book.
So how do we get them to take that mesh off?
So the agency can determine that the mesh below the 6-inch gap is not suitable and does not meet the intent of the original permit and require it to be removed.
And I would so move.
And, okay,
Does anybody want to second that? Or is this just to an aim?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Jay
Okay.
Schondorf.
So this is a motion to require the mesh be removed from the bottom of the fence to restore this full 6-inch gap for the length of the fence as originally approved.
Exactly.
Okay. Klaus Yonder.
You're muted, Klaus.
You can just hit the space bar.
There he is. You're back.
Klaus, yes?
No, I don't think you need to remove it.
Okay, so there's a no. Jay Schondorf?
Yes.
Bill Galvin?
Yes.
Norma Curlin?
Yes.
Stefan Skofilis?
Yes.
Elliot Benton?
Yes.
Joe Rogers?
Yes.
610. Motion passes.
Okay.
So then the other element associated with that is the configuration of the fence does the commission, the agency wish to hold up the staff decision that that's a field change?
The staff is saying that there's no material difference in the track of the fence to the wetlands.
That is correct.
And personally, I don't feel, I uphold what the staff has determined. And I think you should poll the agency by name to find out where other people are.
Okay, Klaus?
I agree. Back to staff.
Okay, Jay?
We'll uphold the staff recommendation.
Bill?
Yes.
Norma?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, Stefan?
This is as to whether it was appropriate to designate it a field change?
That's correct.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, and Elliot, we heard from Joe?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. I don't know that needs a motion. It's up to you.
Well, you have the sense of the agency.
Okay.
So I don't think we need a formal motion.
Okay. So that we're clear, there's other issues on the site that will be coming forward relative to the extra parking spot, a couple trees that are removed, the fence on the far side. So this discussion was very particular to those two elements, and we'll be hearing more from the property. Yes, sir.
A question, the unauthorized parking place that's adjacent to, now, is that adjacent to a carport or a garage? My understanding is that carport, in quotes, has walls, windows, and a door.
So when we approved it, it was approved as a carport. Then there was a change, and it was being proposed as a carport because of planning and zoning regulations.
Right.
There was a change in the zoning regulations that allowed, there was a reconfiguration. It allowed the owners of 82 Buckfield to reconfigure or recalculate a component of the zoning regulations so that they could enclose it and still be compliant with the regulations.
All right, so the fact that it went from a carport to an enclosed garage is because of a P&Z change.
That's correct.
Okay. But we're still going to see this purpose issue.
Yep, we're on the parking spot. There's a couple of trees missing. And then the application for the fence on the far side. So, but I did receive an email from the building department that the state has denied the use of the pond as a fence,
right,
part of the pool fence requirement. So the applicant's going to have to come in with something reconfigured than what.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to have a body of water as a boundary for a pool.
It made sense to somebody to propose it.
Yep.
Anyway, last but not least, we have 0 Aiken Road to classify a lined ornamental pond as a regulated area.
Correct. So this was a 2-lot subdivision that came before the agency a few years ago now. There was a little koi pond. It had actually a lot of lotus growing in it. And it is in fact a lined pond with a lot of sediment in it. So the soil scientists went back out there, and it's the lining actually we saw when we did the field inspection. There were little bits popping out. So at the time, it didn't matter that it was wrongfully delineated as a water body when it was just a lined basin. So the soil scientist has gone out, confirmed that it is a lined water basin, and looking to declassify it as a regulated area.
So it is fundamentally a very large bathtub.
Yeah, or a very small pool, depending on the way you want to go with it.
Okay. Very good. Do we have any questions for Pat? Then I make a motion, we declassify the pond as a regulated area.
Second, Joe.
Okay, we'll run through. So this is a motion to declassify the wetland at 0 Aiken Road understanding it is now a lined ornamental pond. Klaus Yonder.
Approve.
Thank you. Jay Shondorf.
Approve.
Bill Galvin.
Yes.
Norma Curlin.
Yes.
Stefan Skopoulos.
Yes, agree.
Elliot Benton.
Agreed.
And Joe Rogers.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think that takes care of it.
It does.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, we will have site walks before our next meeting. So if look to that Friday before our next meeting. We got a busy month ahead of us.
Very good.
Okay.
Good night,
No
everybody.
further business. We're adjourned at 9:40.
Thank you very much. Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Right on.